Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Age of AI, our series covering the rapid evolution of the AI landscape, exploring what's now, what's next, how that impacts the world of business, the workplace, individuals, and the world. Our conversation today is going to center on the next frontier of DevSecOps and the role that agentic AI is playing and will play there. My guest today is Josh Lemos, who's a CISO of GitLab. Welcome, Josh. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Shelly. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So to set the stage here a little bit, for security teams, of course, AI presents tremendous opportunities for things like enhanced security and efficiency, and but it also brings some emerging risks that require kind of a different way of looking at organizational structures and governance approaches. And as excited as we all are collectively about embracing all things AI, Gen AI, agentic, there definitely are some concerns that we need to be aware of. So we're going to dive into that a little bit. As teams grapple with AI adoption, the emergence of agentic AI, which are systems capable of autonomous decision-making and task execution, what we see here, though, is that this is driving the next frontier for DevSecOps innovation. Josh, I'm really looking forward to exploring some of the possibilities and the risks associated with AI and talking about how organizations can responsibly adopt AI. And of course, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on how organizations can prepare for that AI future, really, that's already shaping DevSecOps practices. So you ready to dive in?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Well, set the stage for us a little bit. Will you talk a little bit about your career sort of backstory, your journey that's led you to where you are today?
Sure. I think if I was a better car mechanic or if I was better at building chairlifts, I wouldn't be here today. I took a break between high school and university to do some of those things, but found that that was not a future for me. And so I went in and studied electronics and computer science and came out of school at a time when it was a very early technology boom. And in that boom, there was this burgeoning security field. And I gravitated towards the side of security that was at that time, just really considered security consulting work. The only work that was really available was consulting for banks and casinos, regulated industries. And so there was like the whole plethora of early technology adopters that saw the value in security. So I ended up working in that space for quite a while, learning about offensive security, application security, red teaming, pen testing, both spanning the gamut from physical pen testing all the way through governance, risk, and compliance. And after a number of years of doing that, I realized we weren't making the world a better place. And so I went in-house to build the security team at ServiceNow. Spent a number of years doing that through a hyper-growth phase of that company. And I really got interested around 2013 to 2015 around machine learning and the possible applications of machine learning to security problems. And so I left to go to a startup called Silence, where we were applying machine learning to the problem of malware. And I did that for a number of years before leaving and going to Square, the payments company, which is now Block, and then from there into GitLab.
So lots of different things along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. It's really interesting. I've been covering the security space for a long time, and it's really been interesting to see the evolution of, there was a time not all that long ago when cybersecurity was just kind of like or people would get frustrated because, the view was maybe that your security concerns would get in the way of innovation or whatever, or thinking that, oh, we've got cyber insurance, we'll be fine, and all of those things are not true. But it's really been interesting to see sort of a shift, and especially in this age of AI and how security has, even before the AI age, security was a primary concern of business leaders and certainly of technology leaders. But it's really interesting to see in this age of AI, security being even more paramount. And I am sure that you probably agree with me that that's a good thing.
I think that we've long sought to make technology safer because it was never safe by design.
Right.
And AI and a lot of the concerns around AI are the same concerns if you've lived long enough and in the industry long enough, as many of us have. We heard the same things with cloud and them sort of move to cloud computing and we're
Right.
going to lose control and all this new attack surface. And all those things were true.
Yeah.
The benefits were so significant that we learned to adapt and we created entire industries out of cloud security and
Yeah.
how to do that responsibly and safely. And it didn't start that way. And I very much view AI and agentic through the same lens. We have new challenges. Great. Solving old problems is boring. Let's solve some new problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's solve some new problems. So, Josh, several AI-focused trends have emerged in software development. What benefits have you observed for teams who are leveraging AI to enhance security and accelerate the delivery of software through the software development lifecycle? And so that's question one. What benefits have you observed for teams doing this? And then part two of that question is, how can teams measure the impact of these efforts?
So a lot has been made of the velocity benefits of code completion and code generation, and certainly those benefits exist. But we are seeing a lot of benefit throughout the SDLC and through security applications as well. So in addition to generating code, we're also seeing a lot of benefit in generating test coverage. Internally, we also use AI to inventory and classify or categorize our internal services and projects. So the development team stands up a new project. We want to know about that in the security team. And so we're using our Duo agent to go out and look at the properties of that service or project. And through that, we can determine the kind of data that service is going to handle, how we should think about it from a secure by design perspective, our threat model, where to categorize the overall data and application of that service. And that's a kind of a boring use case that would have taken an AppSec person maybe an hour or so to go through and do that work. Now we're doing that with high fidelity, with very little overhead or effort in using models. And we see that in summarizing text issues. So you go into a large issue in a project, there's pages and pages of conversation in there. Summarizing that and just getting to the point and understanding what your involvement is there is a huge time benefit. And it's not like the sexiest use of AI whatsoever, but all of these incremental time savings are making teams more efficient. They're able to use their cognitive load on things that are more creative and more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's really a huge benefit. I mean, I think all of us are familiar with those tasks that feel like drudgery, and you have to do them. They're necessary evil and all of that sort of thing. But having that boost from Gen AI can really make a huge difference. And I do think there's so much value in being able to. I know I personally love being able to spend my time on the things that, more high level things than the things that really interest me more than, taking care of those tasks that I view more as just kind of things I have to slog through.
Yeah, and I think that in the past, a developer would just automate that through writing scripts and have to understand all of the context to write a meaningful script,
Right.
To programmatically assess the problem. The difference with AI now is that we're able to have like a broad context of the problem and be somewhat instructive in terms of an overall problem statement that we can turn into a prompt. And that can generate automations for us. And I think that's what's really exciting for a lot of developers, a lot of people working in technology today, is that the time to value has shortened dramatically.
Right. Well, and I think that's my answer to the question in terms of how teams can measure impact.
Yeah.
That shortening the time to value is, pretty darn significant.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing that, and we're looking at it in terms of not just the time to value metrics, but also DORA as well. So we're
Yeah.
looking at DevSecOps metrics in terms of how often are you releasing, and what are your regressions look like, and are you, do you have stable services out there? And I think that that's one of the concerns I hear a lot about vibe coding and sort of the theories around it. But I think in practice, we're not seeing people vibe coding their production services. And seeing a lot of fallout from that. What we're seeing is people, as a developer plus AI model, creating increased benefit and higher leverage opportunities within their existing services.
Okay, so I think it's a given that traditionally there's been tension between security teams and development teams, and security teams want secure products, but a key metric for development is often that speed that we were just talking about. And so, as we see security shifting earlier into software development, can AI help bridge this gap for teams, Josh?
What we're already seeing is that when developers and security teams are coexisting in a shared platform, we're able to democratize security expertise and push that out to individual developers, so that Slack conversation that used to happen between a like an application security person and a developer now can happen with a chat agent. And those are really useful mechanics for getting some of the easier conversations, and again, like increasing that time to value, or decreasing that time to value, in order to um, get the outcome you're looking for with reduced risk and like a greater understanding of what your overall service is doing and the risk posture of that given service.
Yeah. That makes sense. So, talk with me a little bit, Josh, if you would, about, for development and beyond, where do you see, and we may not even be doing it yet, but where do you see the greatest potential for AI to enhance the efficiency of security teams, or to help them adopt a more proactive security posture, or both?
Yeah, I think that AI guardrails are something that are going to be much more heavily utilized than they are today.
Yeah.
We tend to take the legacy model, where we as an industry, of building software and then testing and evaluating that software and then refactoring the software in order to meet our security constraints or requirements. Where I think AI is going to really meaningfully help us is by recommending or enforcing the use of frameworks of identifying in development security anti-patterns and eradicating those as software is being developed. And really, as you think about it as this filter that starts at the top and is going to eliminate classes of vulnerabilities, and then is going to look at specific anti-patterns to your code base, we're only going to end up with kind of a handful of those issues falling through the bottom of that funnel. And those are the ones that are going to take real cognitive load from security teams and engineering teams to collaborate on together. And I think that that's where I'm excited to see us go, is to have sort of this referee model or set of models that evaluate our code.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And I think that bodes well for what's ahead, right? So, you can't have a conversation about AI today without talking about agentic. And so, as agentic AI enters the mix in the security realm, how is it, Josh, that you see the organizational structure of security teams evolving, and how they'll evolve to oversee and manage and secure environments where agentic systems are acting with increasing autonomy?
Yeah, I think that we're going to learn a lot about our security boundaries and assumptions through agentic.
Yeah.
A lot of the way that it's almost impossible to talk about agentic at this moment without talking about MCP and
Yeah.
the way in which that's being deployed. MCP sort of gives us this universal set of interfaces to talk to tools and to get resources and to really underpin a lot of what we want to do from agentic. And that's not limited to software development. That's going to be across the your IT estate as well, all of your SaaS applications and resources. And it really starts from the perspective of individual identity with agents acting on your behalf, right? And so we have to start to think about how we consider composite identities. So Shelly, with all of Shelly's agents, are you now a manager of 10 different or 100 different or 1,000 different agents?
Yeah.
And then sort of how do you marshal those responsibly? The old way of provisioning identity was, Shelly starts at this company. Well, we're just going to copy Bob's access for Shelly because they're doing the same job,
Right.
whether you needed that or not. And unfortunately, a lot of those anti-patterns still exist. And when I think about it, we're going to have non-deterministic systems making decisions about what actions should be taken. And they can be incredibly helpful, or those have the potential to be incredibly destructive with new and emerging attack surface because of some of those boundaries that have now been moved or shifted as a result of deploying agentic AI and having those autonomous decisions made.
So then how will all of this sort of reshape an organization's overall cyber strategy and the way they approach their traditional risk management frameworks? I mean, obviously this will shake things up.
I think it will. I think that we're going through an identity renaissance at the moment. What is old is new is cliche again. But what I think is true is that we have thought a lot about identity from the perspective of zero trust and authorization, but often our thoughts about authorization are somewhat limited, with the exception of highly regulated environments, access reviews, and those paradigms. I think we're going to have to think much more carefully and get much more adaptive identity constructs in place to protect our attack surface. It will be a much higher utilization and different hierarchical constructs and frameworks of identity that don't exist yet. And so what I think about is, right now we have OAuth, and OAuth gives us sort of that who you are from an abstract perspective, and we have concepts of machine identity. But now we're going to have sub-concepts and attributes on all of those different identities, and those are going to have their own permissions models that consider second and third order effects. Right now, we're very good at the kind of north to south, your computer up to a SaaS service. But what happens when all of these agents start talking to one another and we get some east-west traffic?
East-west, yeah. Yeah, that's a big shift.
Yeah, it's a big shift, and one we've not really thought about, right? We've not thought about what happens if Salesforce and Workday and ServiceNow are all talking together to solve problems, and what permissions models should those agents have to solve that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to shift a little bit, Josh, and talk software supply chain. And, so we've got, just like you just talked about, we'll have AI agents who are autonomously interacting with, modifying, even generating code. So how does this change how you think about our existing approach to software supply chain security?
This is one of the areas where I think we actually have improved visibility. Security observability in the open source ecosystem has been challenging. There was a lot of proponents of a security bill of materials or an SBOM approach for a long time.
Right.
But I think that has not taken hold of the industry the way that some of those proponents would have hoped. And what we're looking at is that we really can do a lot more with a lot less. Rather than choosing an open source library with agentic AI or with AI in general now in the software development lifecycle, we just might have a library written for us. We might just say, hey, I need a function, and describe that function in human text that behaves like X or Y. And now, rather than just downloading a open source project, you may be building those first party components much more expediently and less expensively with your own discrete view of your first party code that's not open to the world and not shared in that way. So you are now shrinking your dependencies on your software supply chain above the boundaries of your company.
A smart approach.
It might be, we'll see.
Yeah, yeah. So, Josh, what are your thoughts on responsible AI? I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier in this conversation, but this is something that organizations of all sizes are wrestling with. So how did they prioritize responsible AI adoption? What are you thinking there?
Like responsible AI in terms of utilization or in terms of building AI?
I think both.
I think that a lot of the industry has conceded the building of large language models to a handful of foundational models. And so they have less of a hand, or they being companies have less of a hand in what goes into the model. But certainly they have a responsibility and they're accountable for what comes out of the model. And it's incumbent upon companies, as they're building software that's backed by agentic, to think about the inputs to that model, especially because they really can't control the outputs.
Right.
To think about, as you're prompting the model, what are the quality of those prompts? Are they responsible? Are you looking at the outcomes? And then if they are published and you are looking at protecting responsibility, there are certain guardrails that can be placed on the outputs of those head models. But I think that it's a very difficult problem to do output filtering in non-deterministic systems.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap the show and looking ahead, we're just at the beginning stages, the nascent stages of how AI is revolutionizing software development. Josh, what's your best advice for leaders on what they should be planning for now and over the course of the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think that everyone's feeling the pressure of velocity in the software, right? And how to be more efficient.
Yeah.
I really encourage decision makers to look at the platforms they're using and how those platforms can really deliver that short time to value. At GitLab, one of the things we're doing is we're trying to speed up every step of the software development process. So from issue creation through deployment, we want that experience to be seamless. We want to not just see software go from 0 to 1. We want to see companies go to 0 to 1. We want to see organizations go from 1 to 1,000. And I think that that's kind of the promise of AI, is that we can start to create value that's more durable at a much higher rate than historically possible.
Yeah, and I think that AI is not necessarily new. You know this and I know this, right? AI has been around, been used for a long time, but it is, since the advent of Gen AI and really so much innovation has happened in the space in the last, year, 18 months, that sort of thing. So it's tremendously exciting. It's slightly terrifying. It's tremendously exciting. When you think about this new age that we're navigating, Josh, what are you most excited about in terms of, what's ahead?
I think that you're right, that we're just we're in the first innings of this game.
Yeah.
And right now we're just figuring out where all these new boundaries are moving. We're trying to figure out how to best adopt these technologies. What I'm excited for is that when we have a better understanding, when we take this, what is somewhat of a chaotic set of technologies and all of the excitement and enthusiasm around these technologies and start to be able to repetitively create software that we can understand some of the trade-offs we make from a security perspective. If we need specific guardrails, if we are able to develop constructs of identity that are reliable and durable and increase software safety, I think that there's so much potential for us to create value through AI in the security space and also make it safer at the same time. I think that
Yeah.
there's a lot of benefit in terms of using it for offensive security. There's companies now that have agentic AI agents that are doing bug bounty programs, and they're doing offensive security and being very successful at what we already know.
Right.
So if we use AI to solve problems that we already know we have and have a lot of information on them, we can move on to more interesting problems than the ones that we've been facing for the last 20 years.
Well, and for me, the velocity factor is what's really exciting. I mean, how quickly you can move things along in a way that we really haven't been able to do prior to this. So that's one of the things that, that speed to value, that using AI and agentic to solve problems that we know we've had, that we've been wrestling with for years. So to me, that's really an exciting part of this whole equation.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is it for this episode of the Age of AI. Thanks to Josh Lemos, CISO at GitLab, for joining me today for a look at how the age of AI is driving the next frontier of DevSecOps. I'm your host, Shelly Kramer, Principal Analyst here at Kramer & Co., and we'll see you here next time.